Uganda's constitution. And in this regard, the government enacted the Data Protection and Privacy Act and regulations to provide for the right to privacy of individuals and their personal data, provide the rights of data subjects and the obligations of processors, controllers, and collectors, and to regulate the use and disclosure of personal information by these processors, controllers, and collectors. So this law is applicable to any person, institution, or public body that collects, processes, holds, or uses personal data within Uganda. And also those persons, institutions, public bodies that are abroad that still process, collect, and hold or use personal data of Ugandan citizens. This personal data may be recorded automatically through a system or manually, for example, having record books. So I listed down some key definitions. The first one being what personal data is. Personal data is any information that can identify a person. It includes a nationality, age, marital status, occupation, someone's identification number, someone's photographs, and maybe expression of opinion. It's not limited to the ones that I've listed here, but it's any information that can identify a person. A data subject is any individual from whom personal information is requested, collected, processed, or stored. So data subjects may include visitors, people you enter into contract with, employees, and your customers or clients. So companies that collect personal data are referred to as data collectors. Then the entities that determine the purpose for and manner in which personal data is processed are the controllers. So a data processor is a person other than an employee of a data controller who processes personal data on behalf of the data controller. And then a data protection officer is a person who is designated by a processor, controller, or collector to be responsible for ensuring compliance with the Act. Processing is any operation that is performed upon personal data, and it includes organizing it, altering it, aligning it, combining it, transmitting, sharing it, retrieval, destruction, or erasure. And information, like I've already stated when I was defining personal data, it includes text messages, images, codes, or even sound. So I listed down some of the principles of data protection and privacy under the Act. These principles are laid down in the Act under Section 3. They include accountability. So data collectors, processors, and controllers have an obligation to be accountable to the data subject for the personal data that is collected or processed. What does this mean? This means that you're supposed to, first of all, ensure that you're complying with the law during your collecting or processing activities, and ensure that you have measures in place to protect people's personal data from unlawful disclosure or unlawful access. The second principle is lawfulness. When you're collecting or processing personal data, you should do so in a fair and lawful manner. The third principle is minimality. The principle of minimality should only collect, process, or use or hold adequate, relevant and not excessive or unnecessary personal data of individuals. The next one is a retention period. The retention period should be a period that is authorized by law, or a period for which the data is required. So when you're developing your internal policies, you should ensure that the retention period for holding personal data before destruction is one that is authorized and reasonable as per your processing activities. The third principle, of course, is quality. You should ensure that there is quality of personal data that is collected. That means it should be accurate. When someone's personal information should be accurate, it should be up to date to ensure that you comply with the principle of quality. The next one is transparency. When you're collecting, processing, or using or holding personal data, you should ensure that you inform the data subject about the purpose for which you're collecting that information, how you are going to use it, and if you are going to share it with third parties. You should also ensure that there is a participation of the data subject during the collecting, processing activities. The next principle, of course, is security. You should have in place measures to ensure that you observe, that you protect people's personal data effectively. What does this mean? You should make sure you have security measures, such as having security guards within your office premises. If you can have CCTV cameras, you should budget for it and install them within your organization's premises. Ensure that there is limited access to servers to prevent unlawful access. Also, you can have lockable cabinets for your important documents. You can have your antiviruses up to date. Ensure that the office computers all have passwords to ensure that there is unnecessary breach that happens. There is no unnecessary breach that happens during the processing activities of the organization. So I listed down some of the functions of the Personal Data Protection Office. This is the regulator of personal data in Uganda. So the office oversees the implementation and enforcement of the Act. We conduct also free awareness trainings to various organizations. So feel free to reach out to the office if you would like to conduct an awareness session within your organization. We also maintain the data protection register. We regulate standards for personal data protection and monitor them. We conduct audits on compliance, and then we also receive and investigate complaints. So the data protection officer, like I've already stated, is an officer who is chosen by the company. This may be an existing employee, or the organization may decide to open up a position for somebody to be specifically a data protection officer. This person is supposed to ensure compliance with the Act, and this person may be I've listed down like who may be designated as a data protection officer. This person must be someone with an independent role in the organization and not actively involved in the processing activities. It may be the organization's lawyer, compliance officer, the auditor of the organization, monitoring and evaluation officers, assurance officers, information security officers, or generally a compliance officer. So some of the roles of the personal data protection officer is to ensure compliance, the first one. So the data protection officer, we have assessment tools that are given out to data protection officers to ensure that they are able to assess the organization's compliance with the Act. So kindly reach out to the office if you would like these assessment tools. We have the information security assessment tool and then the data protection assessment tool. So kindly reach out to the office if you'd like to have these tools to guide you during the performance of your roles. Then also the data protection officer is a point of contact between the organization and the office. The data protection officer is also supposed to maintain records of all data processing activities conducted by the organization, respond to data subjects and inform them about how their personal data is being used and what measures the organization has put in place to protect personal data, and also to ensure that another role is also to ensure that data subjects request to see copies of their personal data or to have their personal data erased or edited are fulfilled or responded to as soon as possible. So some of the benefits of compliance include better data management. By being compliant, you're able to improve on your data management by understanding what kind of personal data you hold, where it is stored, and how it is used. It also improves on customer confidence by being transparent during your processing activities and informing customers about the security measures that you have in place. People will be confident and sharing that information with you and entering into contract with you, knowing that their personal data is kept safe. It also improves on data security. Compliance lays the groundwork for you improving your data security. So it's by safeguarding the data against security breaches and taking quick action to notify the office in case a breach occurs. Then to staff, it will ensure that your personal data is kept safe because staff are aware of their obligations under the law. It also prevents you from having fines or being imprisoned, because the Act gives the office power to fine processors, collectors, or controllers for being non-compliant, and also officers who knowingly permit such non-compliance are also subject to, may be subjected to imprisonment. I'll talk about that one later. So during the renewal process, all organizations who are registering, who are renewing their registration will be required to have a data protection policy. This is an inward-facing document which lays down the handling practices. It states down the retention period and provides for the steps to undertake during an incident, the occurrence of an incident. So the policy should include appropriate, reasonable, technical, and organizational measures to prevent loss, damage, unauthorized destruction, or unlawful access. This policy must be regularly reviewed and reversioned at least once a year. So I listed down some of the rights of the data subject. They have a right to be informed about why you're collecting their personal data, how you are going to use that personal data, and if you are going to share that personal data with any third parties. This is in compliance with the principle of transparency. The next one is the right to access personal information, the right to rectify their personal data, the right to prevent processing of personal data for direct marketing, the right to correct or delete their personal data. So the responsibilities of companies or organizations in compliance with the Act. The first one, of course, is the first registration process. Then the second one, of course, is renewal of your registration status every year. Like Anita has already stated, the regulations require processors, controllers, or collectors to apply for renewal of their registration status at least 3 months before expiry of the current registration. So it is the obligation of the data protection officer to ensure that at least 3 months before the expiry, the renewal of the registration status has already begun. The second responsibility, of course, is to understand the policies on data protection. So the data protection officer has an obligation to conduct regular staff awareness trainings to inform them about the internal policies on data protection, so that the staff are also able to understand their obligations under the law. The third one, of course, is to report security breaches immediately to the data protection officer. So staff have an obligation to report security breaches on personal data immediately to the data protection officer, who has an obligation to report the breach of personal data to the office immediately. Then also staff have an obligation to seek guidance from the data protection officer on any data protection issues that they may have. So like I had already stated, but during the renewal process, entities will be required to have policies in place on data protection. You may have an information security policy which has a section on data protection, or you may have a one document which is a data protection policy. So the law also provides for information security, which is basically protecting information and information systems from unauthorized access. Why we need information security management is to protect information basically from unauthorized access during the conducting of your businesses. The law under Section 20, the Act, provides, I'm going to read it verbatim. Security control measures, integrity of personal data shall be secured by adopting appropriate, reasonable, technical, and organizational measures to prevent loss, damage, or unauthorized destruction or access to or unauthorized processing of personal data. So organizations have an obligation to, first of all, take measures to identify reasonably foreseeable internal risks, establish and maintain appropriate safeguards against the identified risks, and then regularly verify that these safeguards are effectively implemented, and also ensure that the safeguards are continuously updated. What does this mean? You should make, for example, if your software is about to expire, make sure that you have it updated, make sure the CCTV cameras that you have installed are actually working, make sure that there is physical security within the premises, make sure that the lockable cabinets are actually lockable. So you basically supposed to take measures to and ensure that they are effectively implemented within your organization to ensure unauthorized access. I had listed down some of the security tips that you may implement in your policies. Put good governance in place. That is the first one. Have a policy. Identify which information assets you need to protect. Protect your assets appropriately. Make sure that there are passwords in the computers. Make sure there are office keys or biometric door accesses that are put in place to prevent unnecessary access to the servers or places where important information is kept. Use good detection systems. Be ready to respond and recover. Test and refine your defenses. Secure your accounts with two-factor authentication. Make sure that the passwords that are being used in the computers are long. Make sure you disable your wireless functionality when it is not in use. Be aware of what you post online. Be suspicious of strange links and attachments. If there is an unusual behavior in your system, report immediately to the information security officer. So some of the offenses under the Act include unlawful obtaining or disclosing of personal data, unlawful destruction, deletion, concealment, or altering of personal data, and sale of personal data without the consent of a data subject. Like I had already told you, some of the penalties under the law for non-compliance include a fine of up to 2% of an institution's annual gross turnover and imprisonment of every officer who knowingly permits non-compliance. So let's now begin on the steps of registration. This email that I've listed here is the point of contact. In case you have any inquiries of registration, kindly reach out to this email. And I'm going to now show you on the steps on how you can renew your registration status. So there are organizations that had made their first registration manually. They used a paper, filled in the forms and brought them to the office. But now the registration, like we are already doing, is online. You do not have to do it manually. So for those that had made their first registration, manually are supposed to formally request for their login details through registration at pdpo.go.ug. Login credentials will be given to you to enable you open the dashboard and fill in the forms. Then for those that have already done their registration online, you just use your current login details to access the dashboard and be able to fill in the forms. I'm going to show you how to do it. Kindly hold on. Okay, so what you'll do is go to the website. I hope you are seeing my screen. You go to www.pdpo, the Personal Data Protection Office.go.ug. This is the website. This is the website of the Personal Data Protection Office. You'll go to login, since this is a renewal process. Like I've already said, kindly reach out to registration@pdpo.go.ug to get the login details for the entities that had done their past registration manually. Then you will type, when you're given the login details, you first put them in. I'm just going to use an example. So after logging in, let's wait for the dashboard. You go to renewal. Since this is a renewal, go to renewal and then fill in the information. So I'm just going to give an example. Then you put the organization's email address. Then look for category. It is possible for an organization to be all the three, that is a controller, processor, or collector, depending on the circumstances of the case. So we usually require all organizations to click all the three. Then you look for the type of organization. I'm just going to give, if it's an NGO, you click that you are an NGO, a non-governmental organization. If it's a limited liability company, if you're in government, you put public body, if it's a partnership, or if it's an individual. For now, I'm just going to put a limited liability company or corporation. Look for the country of incorporation. Let's say, for example, Angola. Put your registration number, the registration number of the organization as it appears on the certificate of incorporation, or for example, for NGOs, on the certificate that is issued by the NGO Bureau. So let's just put a random registration number. You look for the sector. I'm going to put, let's say, for example, 80. Then you put the physical address of the offices. Let's say plot 123, Kampala. Then look for the nature of business categories. If the categories are not if your organization doesn't fall within the others, you can always click other service activities. Don't click on something which is wrong. So I'm just going to put, for example, education. Then you click education, then you click next. Make sure you designate the data protection officer. Like I've already said, this is a person who is a point of contact between your organization and the personal data protection office. And this person is supposed to ensure that there is compliance with the law. The physical address of the data protection officer should be the address of their office, not their home address. It has to be a valid telephone number. Put the email address of the data protection officer. Then you put their title within the organization. For example, if they are data protection officer only, you put data protection officer. If maybe they're the head of legal, you put head of legal. If they are monitoring and evaluation officer, you can include that. Or if it is your lawyer, just put lawyer. Okay, let's go to the next. So this page on data collected or processed is basically you're supposed to disclose the source of your person, the people from whom you collect your personal data from, and what this page is basically on, you disclose the type of data subjects that you have during your processing activities and the kind of personal data that you're collecting. So organizations have employees. So those are, it's possible for an employee to be a data subject. The clients or customers also are data subjects because you collect their information. For example, most organizations have visitors books. Most organizations require their clients or customers to disclose national IDs. So you click on all these. For government agencies or entities, these ones are required to tick this part. But for limited liability companies or non-governmental organizations or partnerships or individuals, you're required to click all these, depending on the circumstances of the case, of course. So like I've already said, this page is about disclosure of information of your data subjects and the kind of information that you're collecting. So you take on name, nationality, age, postal address. This page covers all the kinds of information you may collect from the data subjects. Like I've already said, data subjects include your visitors because you collect information from your visitors. Data subjects also include your suppliers or contractors because you collect when you're drafting contracts, you're usually disclosing information about your contractors. Also, your employees are also data subjects, and also your clients are data subjects. For government entities, your data subjects also include the regulated or licensed entities. For example, NSSF is collecting information from various organizations that have employees during their processing activities in order to collect the staff savings. So you click on any kind of information that you may collect from the data subject. For example, name, age, marital status. Some entities also collect unique personal or online identifiers, marital status, even for the employees, email addresses, if you have people's email addresses. If you pay through the bank and you have people's bank account names, then you also click on that. For the organizations that pay NSSF, make sure you click on social security number because you also have that personal data. Date of birth, even for the employees. You know, when an employee is applying for a job, usually ask for such information, their date of birth, etc. So make sure you click on date of birth. If you ask people for the copies of their national ID or ask for their ID number, you also click on that. If you ask for copies of their driver's license or passport, you also click on that. The next is individuals' commercial information. Now, it's usually organizations like banks and credit reference bureaus or money lending companies that have records of people's personal property. It's usually, let's say, for example, a bank will do this for security purposes. So it has your information about your personal property. That means organizations like banks are supposed to tick on that. Credit reference bureaus and supermarket apps. There are some supermarkets that have applications and websites that monitor your purchasing habits. Even platforms like Jumia, the platform uses cookies, which will give you a better customer experience, but it's actually monitoring your purchasing habits. So organizations that do that are supposed to click on that information. The next is sensory data. So sensory data may apply to organizations that record, that have CCTV cameras within their offices and that are actually working. So the camera is actually collecting video footage. Then you click on that. Also, sensory data amounts to photographs. So if, for example, most NGOs, when they're doing the processing activities, they're taking pictures of people, they're recording videos of people. Not that it's a bad thing, but they're doing it for accountability purposes. So depending on the circumstances of the case, if you have CCTV cameras, or if you take videos or pictures of people, then you have to click on visual. If it's video, for example, if it's like recording Zoom meetings or recording videos, then you also click audio. Now, the next part is internet or similar network activity. So if your website is collecting information about someone, it's usually a browsing history, search history, IP address, or interaction with the website. I'm going to give an example of websites that provide a platform for you to contact them on the back end. That means that website is collecting information about someone's interaction with the website, application or advertisement, depending on the circumstances of the case. There are also some websites that collect search history, browsing history, and IP address. So contact your IT people. In case for those organizations that have websites, contact your IT team and ask them and inquire from them what kind of information your website or application is collecting. So this is basically for those, the data subjects in the circumstances of this case are people who are reaching out to your website. They search for your website. Maybe if it's possible for them to log in, then you'll be collecting information. So kindly contact your IT people and consult them about what kind of information your website is collecting. The next one, of course, is geolocation data. Now, also geolocation data has there are two circumstances under which geolocation data may be collected. So it's possible for some websites to collect someone's geolocation, their address, where they are. It's possible for a website to do that, or an application. For example, applications like Safe Border, they use GPS to find customers and ensure that the customer and the border are able to meet up in the place where the customer is. So that means that application of Safe Border or Uber is getting your GPS address, your geolocation data. Then there are also websites that do the same besides Safe Border and Uber. So you also have to ask your IT person what kind of information your website is collecting, especially if it's collecting GPS address. Then also if your website is collecting the IP address, that means it's also collecting the geolocation data. So if you tick on IP address, you also have to tick on geolocation data. Geolocation data may also be collected using tracking devices that are put on someone's motor vehicle. So if your office has GPS trackers on the office vehicles that are given out to the employees, then that means you're collecting geolocation data. There are also companies that provide these tracking devices to various companies and individuals. That means those companies are also collecting geolocation data of individuals. So if you collect geolocation data, make sure you also click it. The next one, of course, is education information and professional or employment related information. So I really hope I'm not speaking too fast and you people are able to understand me. So if you kindly hold on. So if you, now this part applies to information that you collect from your employees. So you see when someone is applying for a job within your organization, the recruitment team or the HR department usually asks for information about someone's educational qualifications, asks for copies of certificates certificates from the institutions where these people studied from, their academic documents. So if you have employees and collect that information, that means of course you have to click on educational qualifications. Then this is the part on professional or employment related information. There are organizations that do performance evaluations. This is also HR work. The HR department conducts performance evaluations, or the various departments do so. Then that means that is someone's personal data that you're collecting. Disciplinary actions, when you fire someone, there is always a record that this person left, or maybe this person worked here for a period of time. So if you have such information within your documentation, your HR activities, then that means you're supposed to click on that. Also, if your organization collects professional association membership details, you're also supposed to tick on this. This is basically, if you have lawyers within your organization and you ask them if they are members of, you require documentation about if they are members of Uganda Law Society, or if you are a hospital and require information about if the doctor is a member of the Association of Medical Practitioners. So if you require that information during your HR activities, then you're also supposed to click on these ones, depending on the circumstances of the case, of course. Now, this information inferences drawn from other personal data to create individual profiles. It also varies from organization to organization. Let's say, for example, a hospital. Hospitals collect such information from the people who they provide their healthcare services to, depending on what the hospital does. Okay, their attitudes, intelligence. Then there are also organizations such as Jumia or Amazon. That first, wait, let me first tick, then I show you. Organizations that monitor your behavior on their platforms. So if a supermarket has an application or a website that allows people to buy goods from that platform, then the website will be monitoring people's preferences, because the cookies they seek to boost your experience on the website. So obviously the cookie will monitor your preferences on the website. Then also NGOs that collect this information, for example, the ones who are dealing with children, they usually have files on different people, or organizations that are dealing with refugees. They usually have files about people's behavior, especially the beneficiaries of their NGO activities. Also schools also have this. They click on abilities because they monitor how a student is able to perform in school, also characteristics. So if you have files about individuals that has this kind of information, you kindly click the kind of information that you collect. Now, special personal data, this one applies, of course. The first one is financial information. If you have mobile money numbers or bank account information about your employees, or about the people you enter into contract with, or about your client, then you collect financial information. NGOs usually collect also biometric data, even various organizations, depending on the circumstances of the case. So you have this page basically is for the kind of information that you collect from individuals. If you provide healthcare services, then that means you're supposed to tick on health status or medical records of an individual. If you deal basically in reproductive health, then you click on sexual life details. If you collect genetic data, if you are an NGO that is a church, then that means you collect this kind of information. If you deal in refugees, then you also, of course, collect this information, that you have information about someone's race or ethnic origin. Then if you collect this information as well, kindly also tick it. Let's go to the next page. Okay, so for what purpose This one also varies, but during the registration process, I usually advise organizations to click for government. This one is for government. So if you're a public body, then you click this. If you're a public body, government entity, then you are required to click this. But for the private organizations or individuals or NGOs, then you're supposed to click these. So specify the law. Various laws apply to various organizations. For example, NGOs. The NGO Act is your law, that is the law that applies to you. If it's like NSSF, then it's the NSSF Act. If you pay NSSF, you click this. There are various laws that apply. Or if you don't know the laws that apply to you, you can always put corporate and commercial law, because corporate and commercial law will cover everything. But in our previous webinars, our counsel Ian Obo provided us with information about the various laws. So let me just list a few. Employment Acts, NSSF Act, Income Tax Act, So I've listed down some of the few laws that are applicable to you, that impose an obligation on you to collect information about an individual. For example, the Employment Act, when you're entering into a contract of employment with your employee, you collect their name, their educational qualifications, if they are marital status. So this law applies to you and you're under an obligation to collect that information. Also, the NSSF Act imposes an obligation on various organizations to remit staff savings to NSSF. So that means when you want to remit the staff savings, you collect the name of that employee, you collect their TIN number, you collect their NSSF number in order to remit those funds. So various laws apply to various entities. Let me see, let's just leave it at the NSSF Act for now. Then specify the service. So you're supposed to specify the kind of services that you provide as an organization. So let's say IT services. And specify the obligation, you just put compliance with the law. If you're sure about the total records you have as an organization, you can put, let me just put, for example, 10. If you are sure and all this information is accurate, you include that information. Let me just put 90%. Then retention period. So like we have already stated, the retention period should be a period that is authorized by law. So you're not supposed to retain information for a period that is unreasonable. The law does not specify the retention period, but it should be a period for which you require that information, and the period should be lawful. So an organization, I usually advise, as per internal policies, to at least put between 30 to 50 years, a period for which you retain your personal data. The personal data you collect before destroying it. It should be reasonable. So you can't put like, okay, the maximum as per the system is 100, but I usually advise people who are unaware maybe to put like 20 years. The next one, let's go to the next page. Disclosure and transfer. A number of entities, when they get to this page, they click no, but in actual sense, organizations are disclosing personal data. So some of the entities to whom you may disclose personal data to include URA, when you're filing returns, tax purposes, there's some personal data that is being disclosed during the processing activities. Then also NSSF usually disclose like people's names, their numbers, their NSSF numbers. So to remit staff savings. Okay, save. Then commercial banks for banking services. Uganda Registration Services Bureau. Uganda Registration Services Bureau. When you're incorporating your company, you disclose to URSB the details of your directors. When you're when there is a change of, let's say, the company secretary, you're usually disclosing information to URSB during the registration of your documents, your company documents. So information is usually disclosed to Uganda Registration Services Bureau about the names of the directors, their phone numbers, the bank account information that belongs to the directors or the company secretaries, who the shareholders are, so who the members are. So you see, there's a lot of information that is disclosed to Uganda Registration Services Bureau, registration of documents. Then another one may be insurance companies for insurance services. So this part is basically this part basically deals with the kind of information, personal data you may disclose to various entities. Also, another one is the donors. So for NGOs that have donors, you're usually disclosing information, personal data to your donors. This information includes your photographs of the beneficiaries of your NGO services, financial information about the staff, or maybe staff details. So donors have a lot of information that is, a lot of personal data that is disclosed to them during the processing activities. So here you can put for donation purposes and accountability. There is one more that I'm going to share with you. For organizations that use backup on the cloud or have their websites hosted by companies, by various companies, you're supposed to disclose the kind of companies that you're dealing with to provide you cloud hosting or website hosting services. For example, some people back up on Google, other people back up on Microsoft. So that kind of, when you're backing up using these cloud hosting services provided for by these companies, you're actually disclosing personal data to those organizations because they are the ones who are providing you with the cloud hosting services. Or maybe you can put for data backup. Okay, then also for organizations like IT companies, usually get certified by NITA for IT certification. This is for IT companies. You disclose that kind of information when you're trying to get certified as an IT provider. Now, if your donors, this is now the first one. The first one is for NGOs. If you have donors who are abroad, you have to, since these organizations or your donors are abroad, you're disclosing personal data during the accountability processing activities. So for example, if you have a donor in Argentina, the purpose is for accountability purposes with our donors. We open the brackets, let's say for example, UN, okay, let's put World Health Organization. Then under brief description, you briefly state the kind of information that you usually share with the donors. The first one, of course, being photographs. For NGOs, it has to be photographs. Most NGOs during the For accountability purposes, they usually take pictures of the beneficiaries and share that information. If you share staff information, financial information, beneficiary information, then that means you're disclosing personal data too. Also, for organizations, let's say, for example, organizations who have their headquarters abroad, you're also supposed to include that you transfer personal data outside Uganda. So let's say, for example, your headquarters are in Aruba. Usually for accountability purposes, you're sharing information, or maybe you're sharing the same system, you're using the same system. Personal data is being transferred to that country. So let's say, for example, headquarters and the purpose for accountability purposes. Okay, so if your headquarters are abroad, you have to disclose that you transfer personal data outside. Or for example, if a company is providing you with backup services on the cloud, for example, if you back up on Google or back up on Microsoft, you look for the United States. Then for data backup services on the cloud by Microsoft or with Microsoft. Okay, then you briefly state the kind of information you usually back up on the cloud. Let's say, for example, staff information, financial information. So basically, this part depends on what happens within your organization. It depends on the processing activities of your organization. Some organizations don't transfer personal data outside Uganda. I've tried to give as many examples as possible because it varies depending on the circumstances of the case. So I removed that one. Let me just leave the example here, just for. So you save. Okay, then let's, at least I've tried to elaborate. I hope people have understood. The next one is security information. So like I've already told you, the law requires companies to put in place, organizations generally, to put in place security measures that are able to protect people's personal information during your processing activities and prevent unnecessary, unlawful access of personal data or an unnecessary breach that could have been avoided. Some security measures include having, I'm going to start with the basics and then try to go to like the complex parts. So some security measures include having security guards within your premises, within office premises. Doing data backup is also a security measure, just in case you're hacked and you're unable to access your information. But if you've backed up your information, or maybe if the fire breaks out in your offices and you've backed up your information somewhere, you're able to access that information. So data backup is also another security measure. Another one includes having CCTV cameras, having I'm going to type the others, having firewalls, having regular security awareness trainings, having a policy in place. So like I've already told you, it varies. So you can always Google security measures You can find a number of examples to guide you when you're designing your information security policy or data protection policy. But during the renewal process, all organizations will be required to have an information security policy or a data protection policy, which must be uploaded here. You can always consult or even use Google or ask your lawyers to help you draft one, depending on the processing activities of your organization. So Form 3, let me first open Form 3. You can use the Form 3 that you used previously in the previous year. It must be signed by people who have power to sign on behalf of the company and commissioned by a commissioner for oaths. Just for clarity purposes, let me, if you want to access Form 3, go to the website, then go to Information Center, go to Resources, look for Form 3. You know, we have so many templates here, even an annual compliance report during the period when you're supposed to file your annual compliance report. We have the template here, we have the laws, we have the press releases, all the forms that are required of you, even are all here on our resource center. So you just look for Form 3. You can always visit our website and check out the kinds of documents that will help you to enable you to comply effectively. So you download Form 3. I'm going to try and open it so that you're able to see, because there are some people, even during the renewal process, they don't know what Form 3 is. Kindly hold on. Okay, so Form 3 is an undertaking not to process or store personal data in a country outside Uganda unless that country has adequate measures in place for the protection of personal data, at least equivalent to the protection provided for under Uganda's Act. So it's an undertaking by the organization. Here, you put the name of the organization. Don't put the name of the person who is making this application for renewal. You have to put the name of the organization. So let's say, for example, I-Limited undertake not to process or store personal data in a country outside Uganda unless that country has adequate measures in place for the protection of personal data, at least equivalent to the protection provided for under the Act or permitted under the Act. Then you put the date, the address of the organization, then the name and title of a person who has powers to sign on behalf of the company. You see, this undertaking is binding, so it cannot be done by an ordinary employee. It has to be done by someone with powers to bind the organization. For example, the managing director, the country director, the executive director. It can't be an ordinary employee, for example, an HR officer. No offense, of course, I respect all positions, but this undertaking has to be done by someone who has powers to bind the company or the organization. Then the person puts their name, their title within the organization, and then they sign. Now, this document has to be commissioned by a commissioner for oaths. Some people upload the Form 3 without commissioning the document. So commissioning, if you want to commission this document, go to any nearby law firm and tell them that you want to commission this document. The commissioner for oaths will stamp and sign for you this document. If there is no law firm close to your organization, you can go to any nearby magistrate's court and ask the magistrate to commission for you this document. A magistrate has also power to commission a document. Okay, let's go back to the page. So after having Form 3 signed and commissioned, you attach it, then also attach proof of payment. Kindly note that we no longer issue invoices. You can check our YouTube channel. There is a video to guide you on how to generate an assessment from URA through the URA website. So you generate the assessment, take it to a nearby bank, which is you first generate the assessment. It will generate for you 100,000 shillings to pay minus bank charges. You take it to any nearby bank of your choice and convenience and present the document to the teller with the fees, which include bank charges, and then that receipt that you get from the teller is what you attach here. The next one is certifying that the information is correct that you have submitted, and then you apply formally to be registered as a data collector, processor, or controller. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to use my name. Okay. Some people put commas. Now you see, if you put a comma, that's our system is going to refuse, or if you put a mark here, the system is going to refuse and you will be unable to submit. Okay. Make sure you just leave a space and then put your title. For example, executive director or lawyer, or maybe head of compliance or human resource, depending on who has made this application, or director. Okay, then you when this information is okay, you'll be able to submit your application. Of course, this is I was just using this account to give you examples and direct you. But if you've uploaded all the documents, all the necessary documents, you kindly note that you have to attach the information security policy or a data protection policy during the renewal process. Attach form 3, attach proof of payment. The option to submit will automatically come here, and then you submit the application. That is all that I had for you. Thank you so much for listening. Kindly note that in case you have any queries, you can reach out to registration@pdpo.go.ug. Let me share that email on the screen. Yeah, so you can always reach out to registration@pdpo.go.ug for any queries or any inquiries. And I also wanted to repeat that those that made their application manually the first time have to formally request for their login details through this email address. Login details will be shared to you so that you can be able to submit your application for renewal of registration online. It doesn't have to be manually. So for any queries, kindly reach out to registration@pdpo.go.ug. Thank you so much for listening. Anita, you can take over.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabella, for that great presentation. I am going to dive into the questions. We shall just have a few questions. And for people that do not have their credentials yet, I see a lot of questions about credentials. As Isabella has mentioned, kindly send an email to that email in that chat, registration@pdpo.go.ug, and we'll be able to give you your login credentials and start on your renewal process. I am going to go to the questions. Okay, question 1, someone is asking, how do I go about payments at renewal stage? Over to you.
Okay, like I told you already, there is a video on how to generate the assessment. The video, of course, provides details. Let me just open the URA website to show you how to do it. So you go to the URA website, it's ura.go.ug. And kindly note that you can always access this the video on how to generate the assessment on YouTube. I'm going to briefly show you how to generate one here since we're on the webinar. So you go to the URA website, then go to payments, you go to payment registration. Please kindly note Okay, so this is the URA website. Let me just restart again. So you go to the URA website, ura.go.ug. You go to e-services. You go to e-services. Then you go to payment registration. Okay. You click here. Put in your TIN number. Now, when you put in your TIN number, all this information will come automatically. For those who are, if you have your TIN number, all the information will come automatically. You just put your TIN number here. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is just an example. And then you press enter. All the information on taxpayer details will come automatically. Then you go to details of NTR payments. Look for National Information Technology Authority. Some NGOs were generating the assessment and paying to the wrong entity. Kindly note that this assessment has to be made like this. So you look for National Information Technology Authority, look for DPO, look for register, then click application to register. Then you put the number of years. There are some organizations that have been paying for 5 years. So if you're paying for more than a year, just keep your receipt, because during the renewal process, when you're repeating the process again, you have to share that information. So just put for 1 year. Excuse me. Then you click here, click these numbers that you see, then click accept and register. So it's simple like that. You print out the document and take it to the nearest bank from your organization. Yeah, I think that's it, Anita.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go to the next question. Someone is asking, do we have to renew Form 3 annually? Yes, you can say.
Okay, so Form 3 is an undertaking. Like I've already told you, it is made by someone who has power to bind the organization. So if your organization, if the details of your director are still the same during the renewal process, you don't have to repeat Form 3. You don't have to recommission Form 3, because this undertaking is forever and it has already bound the company. However, if the details of your managing director or your executive director have changed during the renewal process, you have to recommission the document, because the name of the person who you've put in who you had previously put in has changed. It will be unable for you to bind, for Form 3 to bind the company. So if it depends on the circumstances of the case, if your director has changed, or if your managing director or executive director has changed, then you have to recommission. But if the details are still the same during the renewal process, you don't have to recommission.
Okay, I am going to move on to the next question. Someone is asking, if the renewal process is started and finalized before the previous certificate's expiry, would the new certificate have an earlier issue date or the same date like the one that was on the previous certificate? Over to you.
I'll kindly repeat that question, Anita.
Okay, the question is, if the renewal process is finalized before the previous certificate's expiry, would the new certificate have an earlier issue date or it will have the same date?
Okay, like I had already stated, you're supposed to apply for renewal 3 months before the expiry. The date on which the director issues the certificate is the way it will appear. What you're under obligation to do is make sure that 3 months before expiry, you have made an application to renew. So the certificate the date on the certificate will appear as it is during the issuing of that certificate. And kindly note, you don't have to come to the office to pick your certificate. You just download it.
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to go to the next question. Someone is asking, and I think I'm only going to take the questions in the Q&A panel because we are running out of time. So this is going to be the last question. And we'll kindly ask you to send the rest of the questions on the email that was provided in the chat. So the last question is, someone needs clarity on Form 3, Isabella. He says, which role in an organization should sign the part that has name and title person making undertaking? Over to you.
Like I've already stated, it has to be someone with power to bind the organization. It can't be like, for example, an IT officer or someone in an ordinary organization, in an ordinary position. It has to be someone with the power to bind the company or the organization. For example, the executive director, the country director, the managing director. It has to be someone who has powers to bind. You can't, for example, when you're filing, when you're making a special resolution as a company, you don't get an ordinary employee to sign that document. It has to be a director, since the director has powers to bind the company. So kindly note that it has to be someone with powers to bind the company. If you're renewing the registration or you're doing the registration on behalf of the company, if you're applying for registration, kindly print out Form 3 and take it to the person who has powers to bind the company or the organization. Ask them to put their name and title, sign, and then you can take it to a commissioner and submit. You don't have to sign it yourself. It has to be someone with power to bind the company, because this is an undertaking which is commissioned eventually.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabella, for that clarification. We are going to stop the questions here. For those of you that still have questions, please do send us an email after this call and we'll be able to respond to you. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar, and thank you, Isabella, for the presentation. Kindly, if you haven't received your credentials or if you submitted manually, please do send us an email after this call and we'll be able to work on you. I have put a link in the chat. Please kindly click on that link and give us feedback on this training. The feedback you give us will help us to know how best we can make the rest of the trainings better. Point of information, the office will be celebrating the Data Privacy Day in January. So we are going to have to be celebrating an entire privacy month within the month of January 2023. And we would like to encourage you to celebrate Privacy Month within your organizations through different activities. You can do social media awareness, you can do radio and TV if you're able to get those opportunities. You can do trainings for your staff, you can develop privacy notices, and you can as well carry out surveys among your staff to find out how much they know about their privacy. Thank you very much. We wish you a happy holiday season and a peaceful and prosperous new year and a wonderful day as well.